Hi, this is Dr. Aaron Willis, the Chief Learning Officer for Social Studies School Service and Nystrom Education. We're going to be talking today about creating effective online discussions in Active Classroom and the best ways to sort of get your students involved and to be able to be engaged and give you the flexibility in terms of moving to a flipped program or a blended program where some of the activities that you're encountering with your students are happening outside of the classroom rather than completely inside. So the place to start is just to even pitch you on the idea of using online discussion boards. So there's a number of different reasons why we might want to use online discussions. The first one here, the idea of building a class community by promoting discussions. And the nice thing here is that you can have discussions that are started online that you bring into the classroom, or maybe you start a discussion in the classroom and then you can ask the kids for homework to go home and reflect on it and continue to contribute to that discussion. But we know that as we look at college and career readiness skills, the idea of students being able to be thoughtful, articulate, to present opinions and to support those opinions with evidence are all going to be key skills in making students college and career ready. And online discussions really fit the bill in terms of encouraging those types of skill development. In addition, it allows students an opportunity to go a little bit deeper into a topic than they may want to in a classroom discussion. And of course, for those students that are shy to speak in front of class, online format gives them as much time as they'd like to think and consider exactly what they want to say before they say it and to be able to articulate their opinion. So it really levels the playing field and makes it so that students that might traditionally be shy in class do have an opportunity to present their ideas. In addition, very important that students see the work of other students, that they're able to interact with them and respond to the work of others, and that can be through things like peer editing or evaluations, or here in an online discussion area where the students take different positions and have to defend them. They're developing their thinking and their writing skills as they go along. And ultimately, this is another way for you to include guest speakers or guest participants in the class. You could invite an expert to join one of your discussions on a particular issue, and the students have an opportunity to hear from somebody who's quite knowledgeable in the field. And that really opens things up for you. It makes it easy for you to, rather than asking an expert to come to class one day and take time out of their busy schedule and they have to be there and be local, you now can draw on experts around the country and really around the world to be able to join your online discussions and to share and interact with your students. So there's a lot of good reasons why online discussions can be very effective in the classroom and outside of the classroom, and so that's where we like to begin. This is also a great way to move to a blended approach, blended learning being the mixing of face-to-face learning with online components. And as you're getting students ready for more and more responsibility that they need to take on as they take control over their own learning adventure, we'll call it, beginning with online discussions is a good way to ease them into that idea of what it's like to be able to participate online and then also show up in class the next day. We've also seen some evidence that students that participate in online discussions score higher than students who have not participated in online discussions. Once again, this shouldn't be surprising. The online discussion gives students an opportunity to think about, to reflect on, and ultimately to make connections to the knowledge that they're learning. And we always know that when students are able to make those connections, they're going to be more likely to retain that content information later on. Now, there's a couple of key things that we need to keep in mind in terms of creating a good online discussion, and that's going to be a big focus of what we're talking about today. One of the first things is that an unorganized or just throwing some ideas out there and seeing how students respond to it in an unstructured manner tends to lead to very poor results. Students don't know what's expected of them. Students don't necessarily give the best responses. They'll often pick the shortest possible response to respond to a prompt. So you want to give a discussion a structure. You may provide a rubric or parameters for students, basically letting them know what you expect, and more than that, making them realize that you are going to be evaluating their posts, that they're going to be getting credit for it, and that students that do good posts that express ideas clearly and draw on evidence or respond to the work of others in a meaningful way are going to gain more points in this online discussion than those that don't. Now, one of the things that is easy to get students started with, begin in class and have them reflect on what does it mean, when was the last time they had a really good discussion? What was that like? Who were they talking to? What were they talking about? Why was it a good discussion? And engage your students in a face-to-face sort of environment to get them to really reflect on the elements of a good discussion. And then you can have them think about how those same elements might translate over to an online discussion. Because what you see is face-to-face discussions can be very engaged, and people can get heated and very into what they're talking about. And yet sometimes when you look at the online discussions, they seem very flat by comparison. So having students reflect on what makes good face-to-face conversation can help them think about what might be good elements to bring into an online conversation. Now, some of the things you can do to really encourage students to participate, one would be having them make a personal connection. One of the best ways to do this as an instructor is for you to make a personal connection to the material as well. And the value of that, of course, is not just having students become more familiar with who their fellow classmates are, but also when students are able to make personal connections to content, then they're more likely to retain it and remember it when it comes to some sort of standardized test at the end of the year. One of the other strategies that often works nicely is to force students to pick a side or disagree on an issue on purpose. Really set them up for taking a side on an issue and defending that, and then having other students take the other side and have to defend that as well, and then seeing if other students can synthesize those different points of view. You can even assign students different roles. You're pro, you're con, you're a synthesizer, so that those students know what their job is in the online forum. Now, I found this online. I really liked the succinctness of it, the idea of ABCs for quality discussions. A, acknowledge students' input. So students want to know that somebody's out there and listening to them, and the idea that they've posted something, very important to be timely and responsive to student posts. If you're expecting your students to be logging in and posting, then you should be there checking out what they're saying and responding to that and letting them know, affirming what they've said is interesting, and maybe following up with additional questions in order to probe a little bit deeper. We want to build on the students' ideas and referencing any readings, and sometimes, if you can, try and combine the work, reflect on what, if multiple students post different things, look at what those different posts are and try and synthesize them and integrate them together to get students to respond as a group to their ideas. Finally, you always want to find a way to sort of bring the discussion to a conclusion. Often it's good to follow up with sort of summarizing ideas, or even leave out some sort of provocative question that gets them to think about where they might take this discussion in the future. You can even take that into a class-based discussion, so starting online, ending up with a critical thinking question, and then saving that not for the online forum, but maybe as follow-up in class the next day. So the discussion boards, you know, they're good, and we've got examples of really rich content, but once again, you need to structure it, you need to set expectations for students, and then you also need to design activities that are interesting and motivating to them. That can be asking them to make personal connections, or even having them select the discussion topics. And maybe you cycle through, and each week you've got a few students that are assigned to create the discussion topic that's maybe related to the readings that week or whatever it is you're studying in class. Okay. The other thing is discussions don't have to necessarily be whole class. You could divide students into multiple groups and create different discussions for the different groups. That'll make more of an intimate type of discussion. And say you have 4 or 5 students in a discussion, it'll encourage them to respond to each other more and allow them to go a little bit deeper. Finally, email students that aren't participating, or if you see them in a face-to-face environment, follow up with them. You really need to be on top of who's participating, who's not participating, and encourage those. Often you'll have students that are lurking, that are there, they're reading everybody else's comments, but they're shy or they're still reluctant to post a comment themselves. Sometimes it takes a little bit of extra prodding from the teacher in order to get them where they need to be. I mentioned using a rubric. Here's one that I found on the web. You can clearly modify it to your own uses, but this does a number of things. One, I can immediately see as a student the criteria that I'm going to be evaluated on. So I get an idea that, wow, I need to post several times, not just once. I need to do an initial posting. I need to follow up. I need to reference the content that's there. And looking at a rubric like this really helps students to understand in a much better way what's expected of them. Now, this rubric is available. I've got it posted online. And all you need to do is go to our discussions in Active Classroom. We have the Learning Corner where we're posting on an ongoing basis topics that are of interest to those in the Active Classroom community. And so we've got the one on facilitating online discussions that we posted this week. Here's what it looks like when you go into it. And then if you go here to the rubric like this one, this is a link to the live rubric that I just showed you. It's a HTML page, but it can be printed and used as is, or I think you can copy and paste it and adapt it to your own needs, or create one maybe that's a little bit simpler if that's what suits you. But I encourage you to come in and participate in these online discussions. Here's one that we started this week, and we've already had several comments back and forth with people reflecting on what works and doesn't work for them in the realm of online discussions. Now, how do you get to discussions in Active Classroom? There's a number of different ways. So one of the ways is to go to the collaboration menu and go to discussions. That'll take you to a page that looks like this. Now, you have several tabs up here. For every assignment that you create as an instructor in Active Classroom, it will automatically create a discussion section for that. So it's there and ready to go for you. So that's why you're seeing a bunch of topics here, but with very few posts. The teacher here did not ask the students to go in and post on those. Though you can see on this one, Columbus finds a new world, or the impact of colonization, or the response of China and Japan, that we did have a number of times where the students went in and posted in response to that. Also, under the General Learning tab, you'll find those links to the Learning Corner, or more general, any discussion that you create outside of the core group of your of an assignment. So that's where you'll find those types of lessons. So as we go in, here we're taking a look at the China and Japan. Now here's something I did include this discussion because I wanted to show you a few things. One of the things you'd like to avoid, this is great that students are agreeing with the other students. Here they're agreeing, they're agreeing, they're agreeing. But you really want them to get a little bit deeper. So I think our goal is really to move away from students having these 3- and 4-word responses and to model for them that really I agree with you, and give an example why, or give a reason why and then an example. And you really need to cultivate that for students. Students on their own are going to come up with answers like this. But with a little bit more guidance and prompting, they really can agree but take it a step further. Now here's an example I found which I thought was very instructive. The student has posted their response to the teacher prompt, and then you have the teacher responding, the student responding, and the teacher responding again. This all took place out of the course of about a 10-minute period, so this may have even been in an almost live type of environment, but this is evidence of something that clearly we'd like to see, and that is teachers and students being able to interact and work together in this format. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you is other ways to get at the discussion area. And one of the unique things that we have in Active Classroom is that when you're in any given activity and you're in our reader, students can copy and paste a section of the reading and then drop it in with a comment into the discussion section. So the discussion forum becomes a wonderful way for students to do text-based analysis. And here they can find an argument in the text, and then they can put in their support into it. So what I've done here is I've highlighted a section of text, and then I've gone up here and clicked on my forum submission area, and that takes me to an interface that looks like this. Here's what I quoted up here, and here is where I begin to give an elaboration as a student. This goes into the discussion forum, and then the teacher can see that, and then other students can see that as well. So the integration of the discussion forum with any of the assignments that are there, this is really an ideal way to encourage students to do that type of close reading and develop those college and career readiness skills in terms of being able to draw on evidence or find main ideas or supporting evidence, and then have a discussion about that with their peers. Now, I'm ready to come to a conclusion here. We've thrown out some of the main ideas, but one of the things I wanted to show you were some examples of some good types of questions that we offer. So here, these are the types of things that you might want to say that would encourage students to sort of go a little bit further. That's an interesting point. Why might somebody who disagrees with you say to challenge your opinion? Or can you compare your response to this other student? Are you saying the same thing? Why or why not? You make a good observation. Can you give us some examples to support your view? Once again, developing those skills we want them to have. What are the alternatives to the one you suggested? Are there other solutions? What's your reasoning for this? What might happen to blank if your idea was implemented as described? So you can see that these types of questions, following up with what students post, you want to have a provocative type of post to get them started. And then when they do post, you want to follow up in ways which encourages them to go back and to think through things. So I think any good, healthy discussion would involve students not only responding to the main prompt, but as well responding to the prompts of others and also back to the instructor themselves. So to summarize, we've learned a couple of key things here today. One of the main things is to set clear expectations. If students know what you expect from them, they're much more likely to be successful. If you just leave it as open, like I'm going to post this prompt, go on and post your ideas, you're going to get those short little 4-word responses. I agree, good idea, that's cool, me too. And you really want to set expectations that you expect more than that. You can model this by creating constructive posts, by ending your post with critical questions so that the students can see by the way you post what is an effective way to post, that's something that's substantive, that has evidence, and that provides additional questions for people to pursue. We want to encourage students to make personal connections to the content whenever possible. That's going to make it more real for them. It's going to make it more real for others and create more of a dynamic interpersonal space. Also, when we're proposing initial prompts, we'd like to have, if you offer out simple fact-based answers like, did Hobbes think this about the Leviathan in his book, you're going to get yes and no answers. You want to come up with questions that promote critical thinking, that don't easily have yes or no, right and wrong answers, that are open to higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, interpretation, analysis, evaluation, synthesis. When you are posting in the discussion forum, and we want to model this, students, end your post with additional questions to keep the discussion going. If you respond back, good response, that's going to end that. That might be what you want to happen, but you need to recognize that responses that don't follow up with questions are going to lead to an end of the conversation. Finally, a good thing to do, and we saw this with the discussion questions on the previous slide, or the discussion ideas on the previous slide, try and synthesize different student posts. Say, Susie mentioned this, Johnny mentioned this, Troy mentioned that. What do you guys think is the way to resolve this? Or try and bring students together so that they're forced to see how their ideas relate to the others. So those are just a few quick tips that we're offering today in order to get you to have effective discussions with your students online, to develop college and career readiness skills in terms of delving into information, drawing on evidence to support conclusions, thinking of critical questions, and learning how to, in a constructive manner, interact with your peers. It's a great way for teachers to take that step into the world of blended learning where they begin to do and have their students complete some of the work online, whereas some is done offline. I want to thank you for coming out today. You can always email us, help@socialstudies.com, for any questions you might have about the discussion forum.